Hi everyone, my name is Elaine, and today I want to take some time to talk about elemental advantages, increasing your survivability, and your damage output on Unison League. Lately, I've been receiving a lot of comments and questions saying things like, hey, I have such and such gear score, and I don't feel like I'm doing a lot of damage. I don't really understand what's going on. Can you help me? The answer is yes, I can help you. There might be a few different things going on. I think some things are more likely than others, but I'm going to just discuss all of them to make sure that A, I solve your problem, hopefully, and B, just for completion's sake. This is just a video that I'm doing, spur of the moment. Don't have a script. Please don't yell at me if it's not the cleanest thing in the world. Okay, thanks. The first thing I'm going to discuss is bad skills. So what do I mean by this? It could be a few different things. For example, maybe you have a skill that doesn't help you accomplish what you want. For example, there are skills that recover health when you deal damage. That's not going to help you with damage output because that's not what the skill is designed to do. It's supposed to help you survive. They're not very good skills. They recover like 5,000 HP, which isn't going to help a veteran player and probably isn't going to help a new player that much either. So be mindful of things like that. Another example would be, let's say you're a mage and you're just starting out and you're not having a lot of luck with spawns. So you realize like, hey, relics have stats similar to the stats I need. They have higher magical attack than physical. Why don't I just equip some relics for now? You know, they have similar stats. This will help me. Yes, the stat stick will help you a little bit, but you're not getting the full benefit, A, because mages receive the biggest boost from staffs, and that's not a staff, so you're not getting the full advantage from the stats, first of all. And second of all, let's say one of those relics that you're equipping has an ability where it's like, boosts the power of arc heal. You are a mage, presumably you're not using arc heal, so you're not benefiting from that gear piece's skill at all. So something like that is something to be mindful of because, maybe there's something else that might work a little better. If you don't have the best gear right now, don't feel bad. Everyone starts off there. For the longest time, I was equipping lances and whatever else I could because I just, very bad luck with my spawns. Another thing that could be going on is you just don't have great abilities equipped or abilities that you can take full advantage of. So I'm just going to go into my ability set real quick to give a very basic example. So if you look at Starburst, this has an ability power of 70. It damages one enemy 5 times with magic damage that ignores damage reduction and damage reflection in excess of 80 points. Siphon, just so we know, the 160 is highlighted in red because I've enchanted it. So this is better than its base. But it's usable when a staff is equipped as your main weapon. Targets one enemy with an ability power 160. Deals damage or magic damage 4 times. It's added effect as it heals yourself for 5% of the damage dealt. So let's pretend that these are both one-hit abilities and that they have the same ability power. Starburst is going to do more damage more often than not. Why? Because it ignores damage reduction and damage reflection. So you're not going to blow yourself up. I mean, I know it's not always the case, but you're probably not going to blow yourself up, and you're ignoring damage reduction, so it says it right there. You're not having your damage reduced, so you're going to get the most out of the skill. So that's something to keep in mind. You want those kinds of abilities because they're just better. The other thing to be mindful of is that some abilities will say things like uses physical or magical attack or uses magical defense and magical defense and physical defense to determine the damage output. But let's say you don't have those stats very high, or you can't make the most of it because your stats just don't match up to what the skill, or rather the ability, calls for. Because of that, you're not going to make the most out of it. So the best thing to do would be to look at your ability sets and determine what you could make the most out of, what works well with how your character is designed right now, and use those abilities to their full advantage. Another thing that could be going on is you're just not leveling and infusing and or awakening your gear. So let's talk about that, all right? Let's go into my lovely armor section and see what I have here. So things look a little different. So this piece of gear, see how I have no infusions? I can only go up to a skill level of 5. This is very typical. Usually the max is 5. But when you infuse things up to a certain point, see this piece of gear here has that one little purplish color diamond, because I have that many, the 4 infusions. That allows me to go up to a skill level of 6, and if I go all the way, like I did here with Feluda's armored outfit, that lets me go up to 7. What's the benefit of this? It just makes it more likely that the skill will go off. Why is that beneficial? Because presumably your skill is something that will help you either protect yourself or deal more damage. It's also important to note that things in your main slot are more likely to go off than things, all the way down here. So put your better skills in your main slot, and then your second sub slot, so this one where Veluda is the second most likely to go off, and so on and so forth. So just be mindful of where you place things, because that will have an effect on how you do. Also, a little bit of a side, it's really important to remember the rule of 2 with constants. What does that mean? So technically you can equip as many constants as you want, but you won't benefit from that. The rule of 2 basically states that you can only have 2 constants of each type and get their benefit. So you could have 2 in the armor section, 2 in the helmet section, and you're fine. If you equip any more than that, the game will just automatically determine at the start of an event or a quest or whatever you're doing, which 2 of those you get to use for that particular thing you're doing. And that might not be the ones you want, and it just nullifies the other ones. So be mindful of that. Make sure you're not equipping too many so you can get the most out of your gear. Also, because they're constants and they're constantly going off, you don't need to prioritize them the way that you do with your other gear pieces that aren't constants, because they're constantly going off. So I see a lot of people put them in like your main slot. There's no reason for you to do this. You don't really benefit from that. The other thing that's important when it comes to skill level is the fact that it sometimes increases a monster's ability power. So Merlin is an example of this. There are many others. It's just I know Merlin's like this, so I'm going to show you that now. So you see here, it says level bonus ability power boosted by 10 for each increase in skill level. I know I'm a hypocrite. I didn't do this here. Whoopsies. But, that's a way that you can increase damage output. Just skill everything up, skill it to the max as soon as you're able, because it'll help you get the most out of monsters and your gear. The other benefit to awakening as well as infusion is that it increases the thing that you're infusing or awakening above its base. So instead of maxing out at 70 as a level, it'll go to 80 and then 90. It's increments of 10. And it typically maxes out, I think, 120 for monsters. So this will allow you to increase your base stats on certain things that you have equipped and, do more because you have higher stats. Another thing, which I kind of briefly touched on before, is if you're using off-class gear, you're not going to get the full benefit because you're not getting a boost for that gear. So, trying to find things that are in your stats and your ideal gear type or gear types is beneficial because it'll help with everything as a whole. The last thing I want to discuss are elemental advantages and disadvantages. So there's a little chart in your gear. So I'm going to go into my equipment, and then I'm going to click this little eye next to the elemental symbols. And that brings up these lovely charts. What do these mean? This is basically saying that water is strong against fire, which is strong against wind, which is strong against water. The other chart saying that star is strong against light and dark, but weak to time. Time is strong against star, like I said. Dark is strong against time and light is strong against dark and time. I don't understand the logic of this. I don't understand how something can be both weak and strong against something, but, game logic, whatever. So, why does this matter? If you're facing a hard quest especially, or a quest where you have monsters that are predominantly one elemental type, let's say for the point of conversation, fire, you want water. Why do you want water? Because you have an elemental advantage. The benefit of this is if you have weapon gear that's water, you'll be doing more damage against fire because you have the advantage. You're also more likely to survive hits against fire. Now, if you're fighting fire monsters, you don't want wind gear because you're going to be weak against things. Your damage output is going to be decreased, and you're less likely to survive hits. Now, what about these other elements which don't factor into this particular triangle? You don't have an advantage or a disadvantage, so it's not really going to help you do more damage, but it's not going to hinder you, and it's also not really going to affect your vulnerability. It's kind of like it's better than wearing like wind stuff in the case of fire, but nothing crazy. So when people talk about like, oh, my gear score is so high, but I'm not doing damage, and they're kind of confused, it's probably a case of being at an elemental disadvantage. Yes, gear score is important. Skills and things like that are important. But if you are fighting fire monsters and you are using wind and all of your gear is wind, you are probably going to get slaughtered and probably not do crap when it comes to damage. It's just the way it is. It's the way the game was designed. This is just something that you have to be mindful of to do the most, to survive, to do damage. So overall, if you don't like how your damage is, if you feel like you're dying really easily, there are a few things you need to be mindful of. Skills. Are they suitable to your character and what you're trying to do? Are you emphasizing or prioritizing your, quote, better skills by placing them closer to the main slot or in the main slot? Are you leveling things up all the way, enhancing them so you get the stats, and then also leveling up the skills on your gear so they're more likely to go off and you might get an ability power boost in the case of certain monsters? Are you using abilities that penetrate invulnerability and damage reduction and those sorts of things? Like, be mindful of these little tiny details. Be mindful of the fine print. Are you using skills that work for you? Are you using abilities that work for you? Are you doing what is best for your character? And I get that sometimes you're just not able because you don't have the gear yet. That's fine. Just tweak and adjust and play around, and eventually you'll get where you want to be. And finally, please pay attention to elemental advantages and disadvantages, because this is really going to help you in things like Mobius and hard quests, and it's going to help you progress. If you don't pay attention to this, it's going to be very hard to get anywhere in the game. So with that being said, please let me know if I missed anything, if this video was helpful, if you have any questions. I always like to know these things. I'm always happy to help. Just let me know down below in the comments. If you like what you saw here today, please smash that like button until it's blue, subscribe, ring that bell so I know what's up, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Bye, guys.